Hello friends, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Ajay Solke, presently working as Assistant Professor, University School of Management, Kurukshetra University, Kurukshetra, Haryana. In this module, we are going to discuss the legal provision with respect to building and other construction workers. Upon completion of this module, a student should be able to understand the legal provisions regulating employment and conditions of service of workers employed in building and other construction works. Provisions which ensures health and safety of construction workers, provisions concerning constitution of advisory committees, leaves, authorities, and clauses relating to appeal. With respect to aims and applicability of this Act, this is an act to regulate the employment and conditions of service of building and other construction workers and to provide for their safety, health, and welfare measures and for other matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. It applies to every establishment which employs or had employed on any day of the preceding 12 months 10 or more building workers in any building or other construction work. Concerning the important definitions, the very first of all, beneficiary. Beneficiary means a building worker registered under section 12 of this Act. Board. Here board means a building and other construction workers welfare board constituted under subsection 1 of section 18 of this Act. Contractor. Here contractor means a person who undertakes to produce a given result for any establishment other than a mere supply of goods or articles of manufacture by the employment of building workers or who supplies building workers for any work of the establishment and includes a subcontractor. Fund. Here fund means the building and other construction workers welfare fund of a board constituted under section 24 subsection 1. Building or other construction work. What does it mean? It means the construction, alteration, repairs, maintenance or demolition of or in relation to buildings, streets, roads, railways, tramways, airfields, irrigation, drainage, embankment and navigation works, flood control works, generation, transmission and distribution of power, water works, oil and gas installations, electric lines, wireless radio television, telephone, telegraph and overseas communications, dams, canals, reservoirs, watercourses, tunnels, bridges, viaducts, aqueducts, pipeline, towers, cooling towers, transmission towers and such other work as may be specified in this behalf by the appropriate government by notification but does not include any building or other construction work to which the provisions of the Factories Act 1948 or the Mines Act 1952 apply. Building worker. Who is a building worker? It means a person who is employed to do any skilled, semi-skilled or unskilled, manual, supervisory, technical or clerical work for hire or reward, whether the terms of employment be expressed or implied in connection with any building or other construction work, but it does not include any such person who is employed mainly in a managerial or administrative capacity or who, being employed in a supervisory capacity, draws wages exceeding 1,600 rupees per month or exercises either by the nature of the duties attached to the office or by reason of the powers vested in him functions mainly of a managerial nature. Chapter 2 deals with the advisory committees and expert committees. Here three significant bodies are constituted. Section 3 deals with the Central Advisory Committee, Section 4 deals with State Advisory Committee and Section 5 deals with expert committees. Central Advisory Committee, Section 3. The central government shall as soon as may be constitute a committee to be called as the Central Advisory Committee to advise the central government on such matter arising out of the administration of this Act as may be referred to it. The Central Advisory Committee shall consist of a chairperson to be appointed by the central government, 3 members of the Parliament, of whom 2 shall be elected by the House of the People and 1 by the Council of the States members. Director General, member ex officio. Such number of other members not exceeding 13 but not less than 9, as the central government may nominate to represent the employers, building workers, association of architects, engineers, accident insurance institutions and any other interest which in the opinion of the central government ought to be represented on the Central Advisory Committee. State Advisory Committee under Section 4. The state government shall constitute a committee to be called the State Advisory Committee to advise the state government on such matter arising out of the administration of this Act as may be referred to it. The State Advisory Committee shall consist of a chairperson to be appointed by state government, 2 members of the state legislature to be elected from the state legislature members, a member to be nominated by the central government, chief inspector member ex officio, such number of other members not exceeding 11 but not less than 7 as the state government may nominate to represent the employers, building workers, association of architects, engineers, accident insurance institutions and any other interest which in the opinion of the state government is ought to be represented on the State Advisory Committee. Expert Committees, Section 5. The appropriate government may constitute one or more expert committees consisting of a persons specially qualified in building or other construction work for advising that government for making rules under this Act. The members of the expert committee shall be paid such fees and allowances for attending the meetings of the committee as may be prescribed. Deal with the registration provisions as stipulated in Chapter 3. Under Section 6, appointment of registering officer. Under Section 7, registration of establishment. Under Section 8, revocation of a registration in certain cases. Under Section 9, provisions relating to appeal. Under Section 10, effect of non-registration. Under Section 6, appointment of registering officer has been specified. The appropriate government may by order notified in the official gazette appoint such persons being gazetted officers of the government as it thinks fit to be the registering officers for the purpose of this Act, and define the limits within which a registering officer shall exercise the powers conferred on him by or under this Act. Registration of establishment under Section 7. Every employer shall, in relation to an establishment to which this Act applies on its commencement, within a period of 60 days from such commencement, and in relation to any other establishment to which this Act may be applicable at any time after such commencement, within a period of 60 days from the date on which this Act becomes applicable to such establishment, make an application to the registering officer for the registration of such establishment. Every application shall be in such form and shall contain such particulars and shall be accompanied by such fees as will be prescribed. After the receipt of the application, the registering officer shall register the establishment and issue a certificate of registration to the employer thereof in such form and manner and within such time and subject to such conditions as may be prescribed. Where after the registration of an establishment under this section, any change occurs in the ownership or management or other prescribed particulars in respect of such establishment, the particulars regarding such change shall be intimated by the employer to the registering officer within 30 days of such change in such form as may be prescribed. Revocation of registration in certain cases. Section 8. If the registering officer is satisfied either on a reference made to him in this behalf or otherwise that the registration of any establishment has been obtained by misrepresentation or suppression of any material fact, or that the provision of this Act are not being complied with in relation to any work carried on by such establishment, or that or for any other reason the registration has become useless or ineffective and therefore requires to be revoked, he may, after giving an opportunity to the employer of the establishment to be heard, revoke the registration. Section 9 spells out the provisions relating to appeal. Any person aggrieved by an order made under Section 8 may, within 30 days from the date on which the order is communicated to him, prefer an appeal to the appellate officer, who shall be a person nominated in this behalf by the appropriate government. On receipt of an appeal, the appellate officer shall, after giving the appellant an opportunity of being heard, confirm, modify or reverse the order of revocation as expeditiously as possible. What is the effect of non-registration? As per Section 10, no employer of an establishment to which this Act applies shall, in the case of an establishment, the registration in respect of which has been revoked under Section 8 and no appeal has been preferred against such order of revocation under Section 9, within the period prescribed for preferring of such appeal, or where an appeal has been so preferred, such appeal has been dismissed, employ a building worker in the establishment after the expiry of the period referred to in clause A or B of the subsection 1 of Section 7, or after the revocation of registration under Section 8, or after the expiry of the period for the preferring an appeal under Section 9, or after the dismissal of the appeal, as the case may be. Chapter 4, Registration of Building Worker as Beneficiaries. Section 11, Beneficiaries of the Fund. Section 12, Registration of Building Worker as Beneficiaries. Identity Cards, Section 13. Cessation as a Beneficiary, Section 14. Register of Beneficiaries, Section 15. Contribution of Building Workers, Section 16. What is the effect of non-payment of contributions, Section 17. Beneficiaries of the Fund, Section 11. Subject to the provisions of this Act, every building worker registered as a beneficiary under this Act shall be entitled to the benefits provided by the Board from its fund under this Act. Registration of building worker as beneficiaries, Section 12. Every building worker who has completed 18 years of age but has not completed 60 years of age and who has been engaged in any building or other construction work for not less than 90 days during the preceding 12 months shall be eligible for registration as a beneficiary under this Act. An application for registration shall be made in such form as may be prescribed to the officer authorized by the Board in this behalf. Every application shall be accompanied by such documents together with such fee not exceeding 50 rupees as may be prescribed. If the officer authorized by the Board is satisfied that the applicant has complied with the provisions of this Act and the rules made thereunder, he shall register the name of the building worker as a beneficiary under this Act. Any person aggrieved by the decision may, within 30 days from the date of such decision, prefer an appeal to the Secretary of the Board or any other officer specified by the Board in this behalf, and the decision of the Secretary on such other officer on such appeal shall be final. The Secretary of the Board shall cause to maintain such register as may be prescribed. Section 13 spells out the provisions relating to identity cards. The Board shall give to every beneficiary an identity card with his photograph duly affixed thereon and with enough space for entering the details of the building or other construction work done by him. Every employer shall enter in the identity card the details of the building or other construction work done by the beneficiary and authenticate the same and return it to the beneficiary. A beneficiary who has been issued an identity card under this Act shall produce the same whenever demanded by any officer of the government or the Board, any inspector or any other authority for inspection. Section 14 spells out the provisions relating to the cessation as a beneficiary. A building worker who has been registered as a beneficiary under this Act shall cease to be as such when he attains the age of 60 years or when he is not engaged in building or other construction work for not less than 90 days in a year. Notwithstanding anything contained in subsection 1, if a person had been a beneficiary for at least 3 years continuously, immediately before attaining the age of 60 years, he shall be eligible to get such benefits as may be prescribed. Register of beneficiaries has to be maintained under section 15. Every employer shall maintain a register in such form as may be prescribed, showing the details of employment of beneficiaries employed in the building or other construction work undertaken by him, and the same may be inspected without any prior notice by the Secretary of the Board or any other officer duly authorized by the Board in this behalf. Under section 16, contribution of the building workers. A building worker who has been registered as a beneficiary under this Act shall, until he attains the age of 60 years, contribute to the fund at such rate per month as may be specified by the state government by notification in the official gazette, and different rates of contribution may be specified for different classes of building workers. A beneficiary may authorize his employer to deduct his contribution from his monthly wages and to remit the same within 50 days from such deduction to the Board. Effect of non-payment of contribution. Under section 17, when a beneficiary has not paid his contribution for a continuous period of not less than 1 year, he shall cease to be a beneficiary. Specifies the provisions relating to the Building and Other Construction Workers Welfare Board. Very first of all, the Constitution of State Welfare Board as contained in section 18, Secretary and other officers of boards section 19, meetings of board section 20, vacancies not to invalidate proceedings of the board section 21, functions of the board section 22, grants and loans by the central government section 23, Building and Other Construction Workers Welfare Fund and its application section 24, budget section 25, Annual Report Section 26 and Accounts and Audit Section 27. Section 18. Constitution of State Welfare Boards. Every state government shall with effect from such date as it may by notification constitute a board to be known as the Building and Other Construction Workers Welfare Board to exercise the powers conferred on and perform the functions assigned to it under this Act. The board shall be a body corporate by the name aforesaid, having a perpetual succession and a common seal, and shall by the said date sue and be sued. The board shall consist of a chairperson, a person to be nominated by the central government, and such manner of other members not exceeding 15 as may be appointed to it by the state government. The terms and conditions of appointment and the salaries and other allowances payable to the chairperson and other members of the board, and the manner of filing of casual vacancies of the members of the board shall be such as may be prescribed. Secretary and other officers of the board. Section 19. The board shall appoint a secretary and such other officers and employees as it considers necessary for the efficient discharge of its function under this Act. The secretary of the board shall be its CEO. The terms and conditions of the appointment and the salary and allowances payable to the secretary and the other officers and employees of the board shall be such as may be prescribed. Meetings of the board under Section 20. The board shall meet at such time and place and observe such rules of the procedure in regard to the transaction of business at its meeting as may be prescribed. The chairperson, or if for any reason he is unable to attend a meeting of the board, any member nominated by the chairperson in this behalf, and in the absence of such information, any other member elected by the members represent from amongst themselves at the meeting shall preside over at the meeting. All questions which come up before any meeting of the board shall be decided by a majority of votes of the members present and voting, and in the event of equality of votes, the chairperson, or in his absence, the person presiding shall have a second or a casting vote. Functions of the board under Section 22. The board may provide immediate assistance to a beneficiary in case of accident. The board may make payment of pension to the beneficiaries who have completed the age of 60 years, sanction loans and advances to a beneficiary for construction of a house not exceeding such amount and on such terms and conditions as may be prescribed, pay such amount in connection with premia for group insurance scheme of the beneficiary as it may deem fit, give such financial assistance for the education of children of the beneficiaries as may be prescribed, meet such medical expenses for treatment of major ailments of beneficiary such dependent as may be prescribed, make payment of maternity benefit to the female beneficiaries, make provision and improvement of such other welfare measures and facilities as may be prescribed. The board may grant loan or subsidy to a local authority or an employer in aid of any scheme approved by the state government for the purpose connected with the welfare of the building workers in any establishment. The board may pay annually grant in aid to a local authority or to the employer who provides to the satisfaction of the board welfare measures and facilities of the standard specified by the board for the benefit of the building workers and the members of their family. So, however, that the amount payable as grant in aid to any local authority or employer shall not exceed the amount spent in providing welfare measures and facilities as determined by the state government or any other reason specified by it in this behalf. Such amount as may be prescribed whichever is less. Grants and loans by the central government under Section 23. The central government may, after due consideration made by the Parliament by law in this behalf, make to a board grants and loans of such sums of money as the government may consider necessary. Section 24. Building and Other Construction Workers Welfare Fund and its application. There shall be constituted a board, a fund to be called the Building and Other Construction Workers Welfare Fund, and they shall be credited thereto any grants and loans made to the board by the central government under Section 23, all contributions made by the beneficiaries, all sums received by the board from such other sources as may be decided by the central government. Now, the fund shall be applying for meeting expenses of the board in the discharge of its function under Section 22, salaries, allowances and other remuneration of the members, officers and other employees of the board, the expenses on objects and for purposes authorized by this Act. No board shall in any financial year incur expenses towards salaries, allowances and other remuneration to its members officers and other employees, and for meeting the other administrative expenses exceeding 5% of its total expenses during that financial year. Section 25 Budget. The board shall prepare in such form and at such time each financial year as may be prescribed its budget for the next financial year, showing the estimated receipts and expenditure of the board and forward the same to the state government and the central government. Section 26 Annual Report. The board shall prepare in such form and at such time each financial year as may be prescribed its annual report giving a full account of its activities during the previous financial year and submit a copy thereof to the state government and central government. Hours of work, welfare measures and other conditions of service of building workers. There are certain provisions with respect to hours of work, welfare measures and other such conditions of service. Section 28 specifies the fixing hours for normal working day. Section 29 Wages for overtime work. Section 30 Maintenance of registers and records. Section 31 Prohibition of employment of certain person in certain building or other construction work. Section 32 Drinking water. Section 33 Latrines and urinals. Section 34 Accommodation. Section 35 Crèche. Section 36 First aid and Section 37 Canteens. Fixing hours for normal working day under Section 28. The appropriate government may by rules fix the number of hours of work which will constitute a normal working day for a building worker, inclusive of one or more specified intervals. Provide for a day of rest in every period of 7 days, which shall be allowed to all building workers, and for the payment of remuneration in respect of such days of rest. Provide for payment of work on a day of rest at not less than the overtime rate specified in Section 29. Section 29 Wages for overtime work. Where any building worker is required to work on any day in excess of the number of hours constituting a normal working day, he shall be entitled to wages at the rate of twice his ordinary rate of wages. For the purpose of this section, ordinary rate of wages means the basic wages plus each allowances as the worker is for the time being entitled to, but does not include any bonus. Maintenance of registers and records under Section 30. Every employer shall maintain such registers and records giving such particulars of building workers employed by him, the work performed by them, the number of hours of work which shall constitute a normal working day for them, a day of rest in every period of 7 days which shall be allowed to them, the wages paid to them, the receipts given by them, and such other particulars in such form and manner as may be prescribed. Every employer shall keep exhibited in such manner as may be prescribed in the place where such workers may be employed, notices in the prescribed form containing the prescribed particulars. The appropriate government may by rules provide for the issue of wage books or wage slips to building workers employed in an establishment and prescribe the manner in which entries shall be made and authenticated in such wage books or wage slips by the employer or his agent. Section 31 spells out the provisions relating to the prohibition of employment of certain persons in certain building or other construction work. No person about whom the employer knows or has reason to believe that he is a deaf or has a defective vision or he has a tendency to giddiness shall be required or allowed to work in any such corporation of building or other construction work which is likely to involve a risk of any accident either to the building worker himself or to any other reason. Section 32 Drinking water. The employer shall make in every place where building or other construction work is in progress effective arrangements to provide and maintain at suitable points conveniently suitable for all persons employed therein a sufficient supply of wholesome drinking water. All such points shall be legibly marked drinking water in a language understood by a majority of the persons employed in such place, and no such point shall be substituted within 6 meters of any washing place with a urinal or a latrine. Section 33 Latrines and urinals. In every place where building or other construction work is carried on, the employer shall provide sufficient latrine and urinal accommodations of such type as may be prescribed. They shall be so conveniently situated as may be accessible to the building worker at all times while they are in such place. Accommodation. Section 34. The employer shall provide free of charge and within the work site or as near as it may be possible temporary living accommodation to all building workers employed by him for such period as the building or other construction worker is in progress. The temporary accommodation shall have separate cooking place, bathing, washing and lavatory facility. As soon as may be after the building or other construction work is over, the employer shall at his own cost cause removal or demolition of the temporary structures erected by him for the purpose of providing living accommodation, cooking place or other facilities to the building workers as required and restore the ground in good level and clean condition. In case an employer is given any land by a municipal board or any other local authority for the purposes of providing temporary accommodation for the building workers under this section, he shall, as soon as may be after the construction work is over, return the possession of any such land in the same condition in which he recognizes the same. Crèche. Section 35. In every place wherein more than 50 female building workers are ordinarily employed, there shall be provided and maintained a suitable room or rooms for the use of children under the age of 6 years of such female workers. Such rooms shall provide adequate accommodation, be adequately lighted and ventilated, be maintained in a clean and sanitary conditions, be under the charge of a woman trained in the care of children and infants. First stage. Every employer shall provide in all the places where building or other construction work is carried on such first aid facilities as may be prescribed. Section 37 Canteens. The appropriate government may by rules require to provide and maintain in every place wherein not less than 250 building workers are ordinarily employed a canteen for the use of the workers, to provide such other welfare measures for the benefit of building workers as may be prescribed. Chapter 7 deals with the safety and health measures, which contains the provisions like safety committees and safety officer under section 38, notice of certain accidents section 39, power of appropriate government to make rules for the safety and health of building workers section 40, and framing of model rules for safety measures section 51, safety committee and safety officers under section 38. In every establishment wherein 500 or more building workers are ordinarily employed, the employer shall constitute a safety committee consisting of such number of representatives of the employer and the building worker as may be prescribed by the state government. In every establishment referred to in, the employer shall also submit a safety officer who shall possess such qualifications and perform such duties as may be prescribed. Under section 39, notice of certain accidents. Wherein any establishment an accident occurs which causes death or which causes any bodily injury, by reason of which the person injured is prevented from working for a period of 48 hours or more immediately following the accident, or which is of such a nature as may be prescribed, the employer shall give notice thereof to such authority in such form and within such time as may be prescribed. On receipt of a notice, the authority referred to in that subsection may make such an investigation or inquiry as it considers necessary. Where a notice gives relates to an accident causing of 5 or more persons, the authority shall make an injury into such an accident within 1 month of the receipt of the notice. Section 40. Power of appropriate government to make rules for the safety and health of building workers. The appropriate government may by notification make rules regarding the measures to be taken for the safety and health of the building workers in the course of their employment and the equipment and appliances necessary to be provided to them for ensuring their safety, health and protection during such employment. Section 40. Framing of model rules for safety measures. The central government may, after considering the recommendation of the expert committee constituted under section 5, frame model rules in respect of all or any of the matters specified in section 40, and where any such model rules have been framed in respect of any such matter, the appropriate government shall, while making any rules in respect of that matter under section 40, so far as it is practicable, conform to such model rules. Chapter 7. Inspecting staff. Appointment of Director General, Chief Inspector and Inspector as stipulated in section 42. The central government may by notification appoint a gazetted officer of that government to be the Director General of Inspection, who shall be responsible for laying down the standards of inspection and shall also exercise the powers of an inspector throughout India in relation to all the establishments for which the central government is required, is the appropriate government. The state government may by notification appoint a gazetted officer of that government to be the Chief Inspector of Inspection of Building and Construction, who shall be responsible for effectively carrying out the provisions of this Act in the state and shall also exercise the power of an inspector under this Act throughout the state in relation to establishments for which the state government is the appropriate government. The appropriate government may by notification appoint such number of its officers as it thinks fit to be the inspectors for the purposes of this act, and may assign to them such local limits as it may think fit. Every inspector appointed under this section shall be subject to the control of the DG or the Chief Inspector as the case may be, and shall exercise his powers and perform his functions under this act, subject to general control and supervision of the DG or the Chief Inspector. Lastly, the DG, the Chief Inspector and every inspector shall be deemed to be the public servants within the meaning of section 21 of the Indian Penal Code. Chapter 10. Penalties and Procedures. Penalty for contravention of provisions regarding safety measures, section 47. Penalty for failure to give notice of the commencement of the building or other construction work, section 48. Penalty for obstructions, section 49. Penalty for other offences, section 50. Appeal, section 51. Recovery of penalty, section 52. Penalty for contravention of provisions regarding safety measures. Under section 47, whoever contravenes the provisions of any rules made under section 40 shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 3 months, or with fine which may extend to 2,000 rupees, or with both. And in the case of a continuing contravention, with an additional fine which may extend to 100 rupees for every day during which such contravention continues, after conviction for the first such contravention. If any person who has been convicted of any offence punishable under section 1 is again guilty of an offence involving a contravention or failure of compliance of the same provision, he shall be punishable on a subsequent conviction with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 6 months, or with fine which shall not be less than 500 rupees but which may extend to 2,000 rupees, or with both. Penalty for failure to give notice of the commencement of the building or other construction work. Under section 48, where an employer fails to give notice of the commencement of the building or other construction work under section 46, he shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 3 months, or with fine which may extend to 2,000 rupees, or with both. Section 50. Penalty for other offences. Whoever contravenes any other provisions of this act or any rules made thereunder, or who fails to comply with any provision of this act or any rules made thereunder, shall, where no express penalty is elsewhere provided, or such contravention or failure, be punishable with fine which may extend to 1,000 rupees for every such contravention or failure, as the case may be, and in the case of a continuing contravention or failure, as the case may be, with an additional fine which may extend to 100 rupees for every day during which such contravention or failure continues after the conviction for the first such contravention or failure. Chapter 11 deals with the miscellaneous provisions like returns and repeal and savings. Friends, I hope you have understood the contents well. You can also refer to other quadrants of this module for testing your knowledge and having some more input on theme of the module. Happy learning.